All right, your focus question for today is how do I use the midpoint formula to find distances. To find distance. All right, we're going to say that a midpoint is located in the middle of two other points. And those are called endpoints. Midpoint is equal to your x value at the first point plus your x value at the second point divided by 2. You read this x sub 1 plus x sub 2. That gives you the x value at the midpoint. You find the y value at the midpoint the same way, but you take your y sub 1 plus your y sub 2, which is your y value at the first point, plus your y value at the second point, and you divide it by 2. Because you're finding the middle of 2 points. To find the middle of 2 points, you're finding the average of the points. Yes?
What was the difference? Just the variable?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought it was...
To find the middle of 2 points, you've got an xy and another xy. You need the middle xy. So you add the two x values together, you divide it by 2. You add the two y values together and you divide that by 2. And that gives you the middle of the 2 points.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes.
So to find, let's do it, find the midpoint of C, negative 2, negative 1, D, 4, 2. Find the midpoint of CD. So I'm going to abbreviate midpoint with M. The M is going to be equal to, aren't these the two x values? The negative 2 and the 4? Okay, so that's going to be negative 2 plus 4 divided by 2. And then the sum of the two y values, negative 1 plus 2 divided by 2, will give you the middle. Negative 2 plus 4 divided by 2, 1. Negative 1 plus 2 divided by 2, it's 1/2 or 0.5, right? So those are the coordinates of the midpoint. Questions?
So you just divided it by 2 because it's in the middle, right?
Because what?
Because it's in the middle.
Correct. Divided it by 2 because you're looking for the middle. You're looking for the middle is another way of saying what's the average x value, right? Because the average of 2 test scores would be right in the middle of the 2, wouldn't it? The average of a 90 and a 100 would be a 95. So when you're finding the midpoint, you're looking for something that's the same distance from both ends. The middle. So you add the 2 end values together and you divide them by 2. All right, you're finding the average point. You're finding the average x value and the average y value of 2 given values. Okay? So find the midpoint. E is at negative 2, 3. F is at 5, negative 3. The letters are the endpoints of a segment. Okay? If you drew a picture of this, here's the coordinate plane, right? And if E is at negative 2, 3, well, negative 2, 3 would be about right here. That's point E. F is at 5, negative 3. So 5, negative 3. There's F. You're trying to find if you connected these two together, or if you didn't connect them together. You're trying to find the coordinate that's in the exact middle of those 2 points. So you find the average of both. So your M is going to be equal to negative 2 plus 5 divided by 2, and 3 plus negative 3 divided by 2
Or can you specify
is 3 minus. I would do it the way the formula says to do it. The result's going to be the same, but all right. So your middle's going to be at what's negative 2 plus 5? That's 3 divided by 2, 1.5. And 3 plus negative 3? 0 divided by 2 is 0. So there's your middle point, 1.5 and 0.
That's pretty easy.
Midpoint is, I would agree with you, it's fairly simple. So you know what's going to happen next.
Pretty good practice problems.
No, you're going to apply the midpoint formula concept to do something more difficult. Right? The next thing you're going to do is you're going to be given an endpoint and the midpoint. Find the other endpoint. Okay? So there's going to be 2 ways to do it. And I'll show you both. You can do it whichever way you want. Some people like I call it the common sense way. Some people like the algebra way. So we're going to say that M is the midpoint. M is the midpoint of AB. A, 2, 2. M, 4, negative 3. Find the coordinates of B. All right, so let's do a coordinate plane. 2, 2, and so you got this picture. If we put 2, 2 on it, there's point A. It's at 2, 2. Point M is at 4, 4, negative 3. So 4, negative 3. There's the middle. We're looking for the coordinates of B. So what quadrant will that point B be located in? Remember, this is quadrant 1 and 2 and 3 and quadrant 4, right? It's going to be located down here somewhere, isn't it? If A is the end and M is the middle, then B is going to be down here somewhere. Now, here's the figure it out way to do it. Some people love this way. If I tell you that 4 is the middle of 2 and something else, what's the something else? 6. That was hard, wasn't it? Negative 3 is the middle of 2 and something else. Negative 8.
Wait, how'd you do that?
Watch the pattern. If you go from 2 to 4, where did you go and how many did you go? You went up 2, didn't you?
Yeah.
From 2 to 4 is up 2. That got you to the middle. So go up 2 more. And aren't you at 6?
Yeah.
That's how you found the x. Look at the y's. To go from 2 to negative 3, how'd you go?
Negative 5.
You went down 5, right?
Oh.
So if you go down 5 more, that's going to put you at the end.
Good job, Eva. She's so smart.
That's the common sense way to do it. The algebra way to do it is, look, if the midpoint equals x1 plus x2 divided by 2, right? Now, in this problem, you were given x1. You were given the middle. What were you trying to find? You were trying to find x2. So if you substitute into the formula, m is 4 equals x1, which is 2, plus x2 divided by 2. Agreed? Substitute what's given into the formula. If you multiply both sides by 2, then these will cancel, and 8 equals 2 plus x sub 2, which is what you're looking for. If you subtract 2 from each side, then 6 is equal to x sub 2. That's the math way to do it.
Are you ever going to require us to do it that way?
You have to just know both ways. Right? You have to know both ways. Because there could be a time when your x value right here is x plus 7. And your middle is 3x. Find the other end. That's going to be really hard to do by going, ooh, God, well, I don't know what x is. No, you don't. So that would be a case where you have to use the formula. So you have to understand that there's a formula and there's a mathematical, algebraic way of finding the solution. You also have to know that if it's this basic of a question, that there's a pretty high level of common sense required, or a medium level of common sense. You got to know that your end point is going to be down here somewhere. So if you did it and you came up with an end point of negative 12, you knew you did something wrong. You pushed a button wrong, or you did something. You made a mistake. Okay?
So how did you get that multiplied by 2 and the beginning multiplied by 2?
Because there's a 2 in the denominator here, and if we're solving for this x sub 2, you got to get the number out of the denominator. It's an algebra 1 technique. You did it last year. If 7 equals 3 plus, don't write this down, just watch. If 7 equals 3 plus x over 4, what's your first step?
You have to multiply by 4.
You got to subtract 3 first. You got to isolate the variable. So 4 would equal x over 4. And now how do you get rid of the 4?
Multiply by 4.
You got to multiply by 4 and multiply by 4. So these cancel, and 16 would equal x. And you're right, you could have multiplied by 4 first. But you would have had to distribute it. All right, because it wasn't that.
Is that the other side?
Say that again.
Math is the problem.
7 minus 3 is 4. And then you multiplied each side by 4. 4 times 4 is 16. All right, so let's try one more of these. You're given the midpoint and asked to find the other end. S. And it's at negative 1, 1 is the midpoint of R, negative 6, negative 1, and T. Find the coordinates. Find the xy of T. Find the xy values of T. Anybody else get that?
I got it, but I did though.
Well, your midpoint, this is your midpoint. There's your x value at the midpoint, negative 1. So this was your negative 1. And positive 1 is the y value of the midpoint. So this is going to be a positive 1 right here. And then if you say, look, R's an endpoint's at negative 6, and the middle is at negative 1. How far apart are they? 5. Going which way? Up or down? Increasing or decreasing? From negative 6 to negative 1. Is that increasing or decreasing? It's increasing by 5. So increase 5 more. From negative 1, you're going to be at 4, right? Any questions about finding midpoints or using the midpoint to find endpoints? All right, here's your practice for today. Page 47, 2 through 5. And on that same page, problems 12 through 15. When you have completed those problems and you've checked all the odds in the back of the book and you're satisfied with all of your answers, then you check Headline for homework.